Hello, BookTube. Once again, experimenting with the position of the camera and with the light, trying to figure out a solution to this business of having the ascension of Jesus Christ happening in the background every time I make a video. Maybe I just need to make videos very first thing in the morning before there's any light on this side of the house. I don't know, one way or another. But it feels dumb to cover the window, and it doesn't make any difference. It still has me just blazing in a Corona. It's ridiculous. I'll figure it out. You'd think after so many videos that I would have figured it out already, but no. The larger question is it's of course moot anyway. The only reason I'm out on this couch, the only reason I'm out in this room, is because it's the brief summertime in New England, and that is rapidly coming to an end. And with it comes perambulations out in the rest of this house, and Frida and I will be cooped up in the little book room where the lighting is at least uniform. But anyway, lighting digression notwithstanding, today is Wednesday, and that's New Comic Book Day. And I made a digression today to the comic shop, despite the fact that it was sulfurously humid today. It wasn't all that hot. It was only about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, but the humidity was through the roof. You felt like you were walking around in a sauna. No ability to breathe, covered from head to toe in ooze. But I didn't go to the comic shop last week, so I went this week, and I found two floppy issues. I don't usually get floppy issues. I usually just get reprints of stuff. And there was a reprint. I'm going to talk about that reprint in an extra comic book video this weekend. I'm not going to bother to do it today. There was a reprint today. There was a reprint that I might have been interested in if I didn't already have it. But it occurred to me when I was looking at it that I don't think I've ever talked about it on this channel, so that'll be fun. But I did find two floppy issues, and once again, they were two issues starring the two oldest characters in modern superhero comic books. And it's just wonderful to be able to walk into a store and buy great issues of both of them. That is just fantastic. For a very, very old-fashioned comic book fan, a long-time comic book fan like myself. And that is the latest issue of Lois Lane and Superman Up in the Sky. Look at that lovely Lois Lane cover. Isn't that great? No indicia. It's all down at the bottom there in fine print. We've seen these before on this channel. I think that this is just, as a design, just lovely. Just fantastic. And this is the continuing story. It's a 12-issue miniseries by Greg Rucka, detailing adventures of Lois Lane. There are three plot lines unfolding in this 12-issue miniseries. One is minor, which is that a photographer caught a picture of Lois Lane passionately kissing Superman. Now, keep in mind, the world thinks that Lois Lane is married to Clark Kent, and that therefore she's being pilloried in the press as a floozy. And the two major plot lines are, one involves a Russian journalist who was brutally murdered in Russia, and the other involves some sort of secret payola scam at the highest levels of U.S. government with corporations who are being given lucrative contracts to manage immigrant detention centers. And you know that those two larger plot lines are going to be connected by the time this story is over. You can already feel that. But Lois Lane is here portrayed as just what she's always been, the world's greatest reporter. And she is pursuing both those stories with the help of Renee Montoya, who is the female version of the old Charlton character, The Question, a vigilante wearing a fedora who has a face mask that obscures his face completely. It's not a domino mask over his eyes. It just makes the Question was sort of the template for Rorschach of Alan Moore's The Watchmen, and is an intriguing character when he's done right. And I don't know anything about the Renee Montoya version of The Question, although the characterization here is wonderful. The thing that amazes me about this second issue is that I'm reading right along. When this is a totally real-world adventure, there isn't anyone in here who has superpowers. And ordinarily I would say that doesn't interest me. It's why I commit the ultimate comic book fan heresy of preferring Superman to Batman. But this is absolutely capturing my attention. This is the second issue, and it was terrific. I want to show you, the artwork is by Mike Perkins, and it's very photorealistic. It's clearly based on a lot of photos. But there are some great set pieces here. Like, for instance, when the Question makes her way into that Russian reporter's apartment and sees this. That is terrific. Look at that. And she has only one comment: "Suicide my ass." It's wonderful stuff. Wonderful. And there were many years, long before most of you were born, when I was buying Lois Lane. Her ongoing comic was then called Lois Lane, Superman's Girlfriend, but Superman appeared in every issue, and the stories could be fun. And the other thing is this: Superman Up in the Sky, which the kid at the comic shop today confirmed my suspicions that these are the comic book reprints of special direct to Walmart or direct to Kmart comic books that were done in an attempt by DC Comics to to try and tap into a new market. So these things were not available. They were available if you went in to shop at, I think it was Walmart, but they weren't available in comic shops until now. So these have been repackaged as ongoing issues in, I think this is 6 issues of Superman Up in the Sky. It's written by Tom King, who's not an author that I know. I don't know his ways well. And it's drawn by Andy Kubert, and the artwork is absolutely just incredible. Just absolutely incredible. The story at the heart of this comic is a boxing match, believe it or not. As you can tell from the cover, it's a boxing match. And Superman appears to be losing. His opponent keeps telling him, "I know who you are. I know if you could use all of your real powers, flying and heat vision and whatnot, I would lose. But mano a mano, just strength and invulnerability, I am tougher than you. You are going to lose." We all know how that works when you tell Superman that. But the artwork is amazing. Look at that knockout panel. That is just incredible with all the aliens in the audience. And this was terrific too. Superman is on the hunt for a young girl from Earth who has been abducted by a Zeta beam, and his opponent may have information, but insists that the only way he'll give it up is if there's a fight, if there's a boxing match, a mano a mano, a man-to-man fight with no other superpowers. And that bulk of the story, that part of the story is meant to show how tough Superman is, how when his heart is set on a mission, he doesn't give up, even against overwhelming odds. But there's an amazing coda to the issue. I'm not quite sure how it connects with the boxing part. I'm thinking it takes place afterwards. So the Superman, in the course of this fight, has the tar beaten out of him. And the coda of the issue, the second part of the issue, he's taken in by a spaceship of aliens, one of whom is a doctor who knows how extensively he's injured and wants to heal him. And apparently this doctor heals by absorbing the injuries, taking on the injuries of the injured person and helping them to accelerate their healing. And the doctor knows that Superman may be an indestructible Kryptonian, but he is not. And he knows that if he continues, that if he goes all the way to helping heal Superman's injuries, they will kill him. And he makes the decision to do that. And it's beautifully done. Heart-wrenchingly done. There was maybe a gift to very old readers such as myself. I find it hard to believe that it could be a coincidence, and yet it might be, which is the name of Superman's opponent. He fights Mito, who is, by all accounts, looks completely human and has blonde hair. Now, there aren't going to be any of you in this audience who are going to know anything about what that means. Once upon a time, a long time ago, in the 1960s, I believe, Superboy, The Adventures of Superman when he was a boy, was an ongoing comic. In fact, it was a very successful comic. And every month, you got an adventure of Superboy in Smallville with his parents, Ma and Pa Kent, before he became Superman. And I loved Superboy. Absolutely loved it. What's not to love? The monthly adventures of a muscular teenager who has superpowers, grows up in the American Midwest, and whose best friend is his dog. I ask you. There were many, many months when I, even heresy of heresies, preferred Superboy to Superman or Action Comics. And there was an issue of Superboy way back then in the 60s in which the Kents reveal to their young son, Clark Kent, that he wasn't the first extraterrestrial baby that they took in. that before he showed up in his rocket from Krypton, they took in another little baby and called him Mito. And of course, he had superpowers. In the old Julius Schwartz era of DC Comics Superman, everybody who was from an alien planet had superpowers of some kind or another. And quite a few of them had Superman-level superpowers. And Mito turned out to be a delinquent. Juvenile delinquency was a huge sub storyline in all comic books at the time. All of them were about juvenile delinquency in one way or another. Superboy comics, at least every 3 months, was a story of some magic item or extraterrestrial item turning Superboy into a punk. But in this case, it was his foster brother, Mito, who it turns out to be a delinquent, and it's a long and complicated story, as those Superboy stories always were. And eventually Mito leaves Earth and goes, home to his own world. And we never hear from him again. Of course, these characters made one appearance and almost never reoccurred. And Mito is on my mind. He has been on my mind. I am one of the only people, I think, who knows that he even existed, that story even existed. Those great old Superboy comics have never been collected. There's no gigantic $125 hardcover omnibus of them. There should be. But is it possible that Tom King knows about that issue? How could he alight on the name Mito, much less the appearance? I mean, if he didn't have that story in mind, he wouldn't use a dorky 1950s name like Mito, would he? And if he didn't have that story in mind, surely the alien mercenary that Superman fights in outer space would look like an alien. I'm partly wondering if Tom King knows that story. Maybe he's older than I think. Maybe he read it when he was a kid. One way or another, Mito is on my mind because I am working on an epic piece of fan fiction about the Legion of Superheroes. The DC's far future, 1,000-year in the future, superhero team composed of superpowered teenagers. And one of the things I've always had that's always bugged me about the Legion of Superheroes is how prissy they are with their membership. If you have a team like the Legion, you're going to face giant monsters, huge interstellar smuggling rings, the Fatal Five. You're going to want you can have all the variety that you want, absolutely, but you're going to want a core of incredibly powerful characters that you can dispatch when the going gets tough, when there's a space armada to turn around. Shrinking Violet is not going to do any good. And I thought, if you were the Legion, you would scour history for such people. You would find Mito. He's one of the characters that I've used, and I specifically am writing him as a kind of not quite trustworthy anti-hero with Superboy level powers. And here he shows up in this book. In other words, the short form here is that I enjoyed both of these. Imagine buying Lois Lane and Superman in the comic shop and loving them both, having them both done this well. Such a treat. And it made me long for more of the same. I wish that Superman and Action Comics were this good, first of all. Pull in all the A-list talent and get rid of all the angst, get rid of the crap, and just, make issues these great every month. That I would buy them both on the newsstand in a heartbeat if that happened. But also, there's DC, you may remember from an earlier video, DC is also doing a miniseries of Jimmy Olsen. Superman's best friend, Jimmy Olsen, and all of his wacky adventures. And the first issue was terrific. And it made me want more. It made me want to go back in time to when there was Superman and Action Comics. There was World's Finest, in which Superman teamed up with Batman every month or every other month. There was Lois Lane, Superman's girlfriend. There was Jimmy Olsen, Superman's best friend. There was Superboy, The Adventures of Superman when he was a boy. There was a Legion of Superheroes starring Superboy. I would like to have all of those back. I would like a sweet, innocent, tough-as-nails teenage Supergirl without any of the ridiculous falderall baggage that accompanies the character now. I would like the old, traditional, 1950s and early 60s Superman family. And if you don't think you can tell a whole story of Jimmy Olsen in one book, then make a backup story of Krypto, the Superdog, or the Tales of Krypton with Jor-El. Something like that. I would love that. And this is all I'm getting at the moment. I'm not actually buying Superman or Action Comics. And I don't think DC currently makes a version of World's Finest. They wouldn't call it World's Finest anyway, because that's so dorky. But I don't think they currently, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I don't think they currently have an ongoing monthly team-up of Superman and Batman. And I would love it if they did. It's such a nostalgic thing here, and yet the news of the day tells me that my nostalgia may not have long to live. Here I am wishing for more Superman family titles when DC Comics is shortening. They're pulling in their line of published comics. They're decreasing the number of comics that they publish to tighten their belt in what is a shrinking industry. There's anywhere near the level of interest in weekly comic books that there once was. Now, there are a whole bunch of reasons for that, If you go to the across the aisle to the Comicsgate section of YouTube, you will have a universal chorus. They are in complete agreement that the reason for that is because of the SJW infestation of Marvel and DC Comics, where these characters are being gender swapped, they're being race swapped, they're spouting far left political platitudes and whatnot, and that's ruining comics for ordinary, everyday, normie fans. If you go to the Comicsgate side of comic books, that's the explanation you will hear. If you go to another side of comics, the business world, for instance, you will hear that it's just a natural function. That print media is down all across the board, and that especially comic books are being, however unintentionally, outgunned by the movies. One way or another, DC and Marvel Comics sell far fewer issues now. They decrease in sales every year, and that's been bad enough. As watching these two things somewhat seem to circle the drain has been bad enough. But some of you may have seen the news in the business world today. AT&T bought Warner, which is the company that oversees DC Comics. And the Justice Department fought this in court pretty vigorously to stop it from happening, because it consolidates a huge amount of media power under one umbrella. They failed, and they're apparently not going to renew. They're not going to object. They're not going to appeal this decision. So AT&T bought Warner, and AT&T is up to its eyeballs in debt, and so is Warner. And so this deal is being made by corporate suits specifically with the intention of recouping lots of money. And AT&T could not care less about DC Comics. They don't even know that comic books exist anymore. You take, the head of DC Comics, and you send them like a little lamb into a boardroom, surrounding them with AT&T and Warner suits. The first thing they're going to be asked is, well, does your division make any money? And they're going to say no. And they're going to be asked, okay, are you hitting rough times? And the person's going to have to admit, no, we've been losing money for years. And the next decision is pretty easy to see. It's unbelievable to me. It just seems unthinkable that in some boardroom right now, some executive for AT&T might be saying, I think we shouldn't publish Superman and Batman anymore. That Superman and Batman seem like commonly held pieces of American folklore. It doesn't seem like any one person should have the ability to say no more Superman comics. But one person does. For instance, the new CEO of this merged entity gave a talk on the subject of the merger and didn't even mention DC Comics. He appeared not to even know that they are now under his control. I wouldn't be surprised. In other words, what I'm trying to say is I wouldn't be surprised if the DC Comics landscape looks very different in 1 year. Very different. Very pared down or non-existent. So I look at things like this and think, what if, after all this time and all that it's meant to me, what if I am watching the end of the DC universe in comic book form? How horrifying a thought that is. It makes me want to make sure I don't miss a Wednesday Comics, that's for sure. But anyway, that is your Wednesday Comics episode for today. I have an extra comic video that I want to do on the weekend, but other than that, we'll reconvene next Wednesday. Thank you, BookTube.